Howdy friends, this is Roaming Prepper and I'm your host Pete. I'm back again and gonna put together the Saturday Sitrep for this week. I just wanted to remind everyone, take the news with a grain of salt. This is a compilation of news from various countries, some of which we don't hear about here in the States. And I don't want folks to get overly concerned with some of the things they're hearing. There's some that you wouldn't pay attention to that actually worried me. I'll be right back. Let's kind of run through these notes and see what the hell's going on in the world, because it's been very interesting just watching this stuff. I'll be right back. Hang on a sec. Welcome back, everybody. This is the Roaming Prepper, and thank you for joining me. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to share on your channel, I'm absolutely appreciative of those things, but you don't have to. If you have a question, I typically will premiere and do a live chat on my Saturday Sit Reps, but in the event I do not, feel free to leave a comment or question below, and let's have a dialogue. As always, please be respectful, don't be a douche and say bad things to other people. Okay, so I shouldn't be cursing too much in this video, just for those of you who have kids nearby. So, Saturday Sit Rep, this is a compilation of public media, a corporate security stuff, companies, stock market, and government agencies who kind of throw all these tidbits together from various sources. So, right now, Africa's struggling a lot. Now, you guys can already imagine they're struggling with food issues. But starting in Africa, so Cameroon military acknowledges that troops killed mothers. So an activist group accused Cameroon's military of killing scores of villagers in a raid trying to get insurgents out. And this is something, unfortunately, that will happen when you have very bad ethnic rivalries. You ultimately wind up with people overreacting or just coming into a situation already pissed off, and then you get violence that isn't necessary. So at the same time, Congo, Democratic Republic, one was killed at a rally against the rebels in eastern Congo. A lot of instability in that part of the world, and keep in mind a lot of precious metals are in that part of the world. So you know, makes the expat situation and the local people situation very bad. Now, Nigeria is 2 years after Samuel Ashoho was shot in the leg during a peaceful protest in Nigeria's capital of Lagos. The unemployed artist boils with anger as he prepares to vote. So they have an election coming up this year. So do we, so do several other big countries, and Nigeria, for the record, for those of you who are not familiar, has quite a bit of natural resources, specifically oil, as well as, you know, precious metals and things like lithium, stuff for production. So it's in everyone's interest that they have an easy and calm transition, but things are not great. So Africa is still seeing a lot of that instability. So, and again, that affects specific sectors of industry back in the West, but it also affects people fleeing the country, which adds to unexpected migration patterns, right? So there's always people coming in and out of countries, but if a country suddenly collapses, the people are going to run, right? Because they're trying to survive, and that's where you start seeing these people show up in Europe, in the US, and Mexico, and Canada, and it stresses the system out, right? Because you have this influx of people you weren't expecting. Hopefully this is a good transition. If they can get that under control, the companies will go back into Nigeria the way they normally have, and it's going to create work. It's going to create some kind of wealth and infrastructure help. Hard to say, but anyway, keep in mind, that's why I bring up these smaller countries at times, because they do have a ripple effect to other countries. Now, East Asia Pacific was super interesting. Hong Kong removes their international travel quarantine after more than 2 years. Now, what's funny is just before the cootie hit, Hong Kong was causing all sorts of problems to the Chinese government because people were protesting the communist rule over their country. Now all of a sudden, the Rona hits and everyone gets a hard lockdown, and now there's no more protests. And so I just find the timing interesting. Would I be too much of a conspiracy theorist to say that China needed to lock down some of its own and threw this disease out there and got away, and it got away from them, and then it went everywhere? Who knows? Nobody knows where it came from. Even Fauci this week admitted, yeah, he said, yeah, I've got to admit, looking at all the stuff we know now, I don't think we know everything. Something's not right. But he couldn't place it, and he may not want to because it would admit he screwed up. So still interesting that he admitted that, but that's a side note. That was from CNN, by the way. Japan to reopen to independent travelers and lift the daily arrival cap. That's a good sign. Japanese economy is really important to Americans, Canadians, and to the world. They're a big tech maker, and a big tech maker like Japan can offset China's influence. If we start not using China, we can use Japan. Japan's been a trading partner with the US and Canada for a very long time, and also with Europe. Despite the recent assassination of former Minister Abe, I'm hoping these guys can get their economy back going. It's been 2.5 years since they've clamped down. That's from the Japan Times. This one's concerning. So this is from Al Jazeera. South Korea, U.S. aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan arrives in South Korea for drills. Unless I'm mistaken, I think it's not the Eisenhower. I just blanked out. I can't remember. There's another carrier there. That's a lot of horsepower. Normally, you spread the super carriers out because you don't want all your big guns in one spot, right? Because they can be taken out collectively. And technically it's not Taiwan, but it's South Korea. It's like right there. So that's going to be interesting. I'll bet you in the coming weeks, North Korea is going to get puffed up and start throwing missiles everywhere just to show that they have electricity. I don't know. But in any case, interesting. Also, good placement of a carrier if you think something's going to pop off. I'll be honest with you, unless they take the carrier out, Chinese aircraft going against the Reagan and their flight crews, they're going to get smoked, even if they outnumber us. It would be like the Korean War, one of those double-digit to 1 ratios of defeats in the air. You don't want to pick a fight with the Reagan, and of course it has the other ships, the submarines and the support vehicles, and the Marine Corps probably has the USS Tarawa or Taipei, one of those floating around there. Yeah, that they can deploy a lot of Marines and cause trouble. So I'm pretty sure our opponents, if you will, or our adversaries overseas are watching the Reagan right now. Moving over to Europe. This one's interesting. It's from a local report, newspaper, Kronen Zeitung. I don't know how that's said. In Iceland, possible terror attack in Iceland has been foiled. As the police announced on Thursday, special forces arrested 4 men in the capital of Reykjavik on Wednesday. They found dozens of guns and significant amounts of ammunition. So these guys were going to do something. Now, keep in mind, it wouldn't be past any country to use a third-party surrogate to commit sabotage, right? Now, they're calling it an act of terror, but follow me here for a second. If I was someone named Vlad, and I wanted to disrupt the West without disrupting the West directly, right? Now, obviously, I can turn off the gas, but when I do that, I lose money, and then they hit me back. I have to do something that's like... Now, if I go to my friends in a sandy place of the world and say, hey, my friends here in this part of the world, if I will give you money and equipment, will you please talk to someone, to call somebody's cousin, to find somebody over here to cause trouble. Now, it should be mentioned the Reykjavik, and I'm not pronouncing it right, R-E-Y-K-J-A-V-I-K. I know I'm killing the name. Also a very important place for NATO. That could be very disruptive. Now, I'm speculating. I'm drawing a reach here, right? This is a reach. It could just be some dudes who are like, yeah, we're pissed at Iceland. But why the hell be pissed at Iceland? What did Iceland do to anybody? Iceland has invaded nobody. Iceland didn't go to Iraq. They didn't go to Afghanistan. They're not trying to punch North Korea in the back of the head at the bar. They're doing nothing. Why there? Why that place? And why a four-man team? That's a fire team for any of you who've been in the service, right? You get 4 guys, you got a fire team. If you're trained, you can do some damage with 4 guys. Just saying. It's just weird. Or it's a dry run. I'm just hypothesizing here. Maybe it's a dry run. Let's see if we can get cells to activate and commit acts of terror prematurely, just to see what we can and can't get away with. What they're going to learn here is if that's the case, the security services in Iceland are on their game. Were on their game, and they figured us out. So just throwing that out there, something to think about. Italy is giving warnings, according to the Sydney Morning Herald. Beware of mafia entrepreneurs. So organized crime, realizing the economy is bad, apparently is investing in legitimate companies, either by offering bonuses to the conspiring people, or threatening them, of course, which is what the mafia does. But right now, they're estimating the mafia owns at least 9% to 11% of the legitimate economy. So, well, you know, that being said, at least they're honest, right? They're like, we're the freaking mafia. You know, our governments own stuff and have people killed, and they don't admit to it. So, if anything, the mafia seems more honest than most governments, but I'm just saying. Portugal, another cyber attack. Now, you remember last week I mentioned Albania got attacked. This is from the Associated Press. Portugal's national airline says hackers obtained personal data of some of its customers and then published the information on the dark web. You're going to see a lot of these asymmetric, deniable attacks as things get worse between countries. Russia. EU says members will need joint position on Russians arriving at borders. So basically, when Vlad announced that he was going to basically conscript 1 million men, people started leaving the country. They're like, we don't like you and we don't want any part of this. If they didn't go to the streets and protest and get arrested, they left. So Europe and the EU in general say they need to have a plan to accept and give, I guess, clemency or give protection to these refugees or evacuees or deserters, whatever you want to call them. Now, here's the rub. The people who are leaving are military-age families, specifically military-age men. So you're now putting military-age men from a country you're indirectly fighting into your country under the guise of sanctuary. Could that be a fifth column move, or could it be legit that people are just like, nah, screw this guy. I don't want to die out here for this moron, you know? And keep in mind, Russia and Ukraine are very closely tied culturally. So there are people in Russia who have family in Ukraine who have been killed because of this war. So they're not really happy. A lot of them are not happy with the Vlad. And so they may be leaving. So that seems legit. But I'm just saying, you know, if you're an old guy, if you're 70, 80 years old, Russia's not going to recruit you until like Moscow gets overrun, right? But you're a young guy in a military age bracket. I don't know. I'm seeing the news and I'm not taking it at face value. I'm like, there's something more to this. Maybe I just got my conspiracy hat on. I don't know. But it bugs the hell out of me. Anyway, Algeria expels 650 migrants to Niger. So some 669 returnees from Algeria, including 2 Nigerians and 667 West and Central African nationals, arrived and were basically chased out of Algeria. The military kicked them out. So interesting. Now here's another one. We all know there are protests going on in Russia right now. Well, Iran state TV suggests at least 26 dead from protests. Now, keep in mind, Iran was one of the countries Donald Rumsfeld said they were going to flip the government on back in when the Gulf War, not the Gulf War, OIF started. Sorry, guys. Those of you who served, I'm getting my wars mixed up. Anyway, Iranian state television has suggested the toll from protests over the death of a 22-year-old woman in police custody has risen to at least 24. People are literally, one guy went over and smacked a woman. I saw this video on Twitter. Smacked a woman because she didn't have her hijab. She had one. She had like the customary one, but it didn't cover the face, and he smacked her. And I shit you not, people just came out of the woodwork, men and women, and commenced to kicking this guy's ass. And then they looked at the cop, and the cop's like, I just need to collect the dude. And then they let the cop through. In another video, a cop grabbed a woman and got punched in the face by the husband, and then people came and beat the cop up and left him in the street. So people are pissed in some countries. It's not just here in the U.S. with the rioting and the fighting. I mean, it's everywhere. This is really getting intense. But I do think it's funny, like they just slapped, the one woman came out with like a wooden clog and just whacked the shit out of this guy. It one of those that makes you happy. Like, oh, you hit a woman and you got hit by a shoe. That's awesome. Israel and UAE are now doing joint defensive maneuvers, and Israel will be selling an advanced air defense system to the UAE, capable of defending it against drone attacks. I'm sure Iran is not happy about that. And the UAE does not play well with Iran, and they get along pretty well with Israel, surprisingly. So that's a good deal. These guys they're circling the wagons among the more friendly nations in the Middle East, and I'm all right with that. Okay, Afghanistan, 4 killed, 10 wounded in a blast near a mosque. So ISIS is back in Afghanistan in force, and now they're blowing up mosques, but the Taliban's in charge. Think about that for a second. So now the Taliban are having done to them what they did to the American and Afghan government at the time, and now they have their own insurgency with a different group of extremists while they're trying to become legitimate. So yeah, that's a mess. I would not go there. That one's from Associated Press as well. India just had massive overnight rains. Vehicles in the national capital, or the roads are clogged with heavy traffic jams following this inundation, as they put it here. And yeah, India is now getting what Pakistan had, way too much rain, and it's causing a lot of problems. So it's going to be interesting. Now, Argentina, I've been talking off and on about Argentina. I've been there. I have friends from that country. I love the country. I love the people. I'm not so fond of the government because they're not only socialists, they're bad at what they're doing. Like, at least if you're an organized socialist, I could say, well, I don't agree with you, but you at least seem to have a clue. No, they're incompetent. Like, they wouldn't be good at any job. Anyway, Argentine oil workers are now on strike after an explosion in a refinery. Now, Argentina, just for the record, for those of you not in the energy sector, Argentina has prolific oil fields, like on par with Venezuela and Colombia. This is not insignificant. And all of a sudden, they're like, we quit. We're on strike because we're getting blown up. So there's a couple of things happening here. The economy is bad, so people are working more time to make up for the inflation because they're feeling it too down there. It's actually worse down there. 2, the government doesn't run things right, so that doesn't help. They're not enforcing the safety laws. Like, we have OSHA here, right? Europe has ISO, which we have here too. You know, there's some standard. They're really not following it down there the way they should, and people are dying. Now the people are pissed, right? We can't buy bread, but we go to work and we get, blown up and set on fire. So that's going to take a chunk out of the oil industry if that strike goes on too long, right? It takes time for it to affect the market, but if that happens, we're already gonna have a pretty bad winter price-wise on hydrocarbon and a lot of energy. This is just going to make it worse. So keep an eye on Argentina. That one's interesting. El Salvador, a bunch of mudslides, heavy rains, and the Civil Defense Authority said 2 people died in Panchimalaco. Wow, that's a mouthful. Anyway, I think I said that wrong. If you're from El Salvador, please add the pronunciation for that one. Mexico City, an explosion occurred outside the Attorney General's office. injuring police as protesters demonstrated the disappearance of 43 students. So the protests are now devolving, and I've mentioned a few sets of bombs and riots. Protests are now devolving into not only attacks on like the police, they're bombing stuff. This is the second country, and then there was cartel members in another part of Mexico got drunk and got in a fight and had a firefight in a bar, and 10 people were killed and a bunch more wounded. So really bizarre stuff. What a couple of things that really stood out at me on this one was the USS Reagan showing up now for a joint exercise. Again, the carriers go there frequently, but in light of everything going on, I may be wrong, there are other carriers already there. Normally you rotate one in, one out, because the sailors need to go home, see their families, go get drunk on the beach, whatever. We're rolling a lot of assets through the South China Sea in one way, shape, or form. That's going to be interesting. The Reagan's not a joke. It is not only a nuclear carrier, but it is capable of deploying more significant weaponry in its aircraft. So that's not a joke, and it's a stone throw away from Taiwan. So that's interesting. The terror attack on Iceland bugs the hell out of me, and I don't know where that came from or why the hell you'd attack Iceland, but Iceland's very important to NATO. And strategically speaking, and tactically speaking, but more strategically, was that a dry run for a sabotage attack? Because technically terrorism is a political ideology that you are trying to advance. So you attack someone to get attention or power for your political group. They don't mention a group here, and they may not be to the point of figuring out what the group is yet, right? It could just be they were dumb luck and they busted them up. When these kind of attacks, what we would consider a terror attack, are ordered by a government as a intentional act to make a foe or a future foe dysfunctional, that would be sabotage. At least my understanding of the definitions. You guys feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a difference between terrorism and sabotage. And they're one and the same in some respects, right? If you can sabotage something and you're a terrorist. But typically a terrorist has a political ideology, and a saboteur is answering to a country actively in a conflict and is under orders to go and screw something up. So are we going to start seeing that elsewhere? That bothers me. That's really concerning, and it's just an oddball thing. I never see Iceland in here unless it's like navigationally related, and all of a sudden there's a terror attack out of the freaking blue. That bugs me, guys. I gotta tell you. Although I do get a kick out of being in the mafia owning like 11% of Italy's legitimate businesses. If they get to 25, just tell them they're legal, and just as long as they don't kill people in the streets, say, yeah, whatever, pay your taxes. Make the damn mafia legal. Anyway, weird news. A couple of those things seem out of place. Like, I don't doubt they happened. This is pretty accurate compilation, but why? Why Iceland? Why is the Reagan there now? There's already other carriers there. We're hedging our bets, but I'm curious. And as always, a lot of instability. So folks, that's it for this Sitrep. I did want to point some of these things out because it's just really, and again, sorry for the conspiracy hat today. I'm looking at some of this stuff, and I'm like, at the surface, it seems like, oh, terror attack, whatever. Why? Why Iceland? What did Iceland do? France, okay. France has done douchey shit. US, yeah, we've done stuff. Iceland? Who did Iceland piss off? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Albania, what did they do? They took refugees and now you hack them? There's a lot of asymmetric things going on that seem to lack a bigger context in what I'm seeing day to day, which means there's a reason for it that I'm not seeing or we're not seeing. So just pay attention. Watch how these things play out. The Argentina's oil strike, that could be a problem later in the year. That I'm going to be paying attention. As a matter of fact, that I'm going to call my colleagues down in Argentina. I'm going to email them and ask them what's going on, because I've got work friends down there. So, and they will tell me what's on the street. So that'll be interesting. Just a reminder, speaking of my friends in Argentina, I will have Canal Preppers Argentina joining me in October. He is a prepper in Argentina, and Argentina has now, thanks to their friends in US and Canada, have a growing prepper population, and this has become a thing with them, especially when that inflation hit. It hit before the Rona, and now it's really bad. And these guys go to the jungle. Like, I've seen some videos, these cats go into the woods, and not like, oh, I'm going to the county or state park and I'm gonna camp with my buddies and have beer. No, they're like, there are snakes crawling up damn trees and shit. And they're like, hey, look, you know, culebra. Yes, no, you can keep the culebra. But I'm gonna have him, and he's a cool guy, super knowledgeable, and I'm really looking forward to getting his perspective. So until next time, guys, God bless, Godspeed. I will see you all on the next video, and just keep doing what you're doing. Don't freak out. Learn, make decisions based on what you see. And, you know, we'll get through this. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you later.